Dan will avenge his people like one of the tribes of Israel, in Genesis 49. Dan will be like a serpent on the road, a viper on the path which bites the horse's heel, so its rider falls backwards. For your salvation I hope, O Lord. So, a snake, a viper on the path which bites the horse, bites at the back, causes the rider to fall off. That is a blessing given to Dan, but he will avenge his people like one of the tribes of Israel. Also in Deuteronomy it says, Moses says, Deuteronomy 33, and of Dan he said, Dan is a young lion, leaping forth from Bashan. So these verses were all fulfilled, or are to be fulfilled in the future. Dan is a very important tribe. Dan was in the north, he was the head of the northern tribe, he's the head of the triumvirate, the three tribes of the north, of Dan and Naphtali and Asher, all important tribes, and Dan was at the head of them. The sages said, or an opinion holds, that Dan had many daughters, more daughters than sons. Naphtali had more sons than daughters, and they were neighboured each other, so the obvious result of such an association, such an eventuality is that they intermix with each other. They who had more sons and daughters took daughters from those who had more daughters than sons, and that is interesting. And he is compared to a snake. A snake, in biblical terminology, can be both positive and negative. Since a snake was very wise, the snake also represents wisdom. You have a good snake and a bad snake, but it can also mean something treachery, treachery and deviation. And we find many from the tribe of Dan amongst the Irish, and also amongst the Danes of Denmark. But now regarding the Irish, a lot of the Irish people are anti-Jewish, especially in our time. Why this is so is something I don't know, but it's a problem. But despite that, there are among them those who are pro-Jewish or those who are not anti-Jewish. And according to tradition, in the end times, they will help deliver Israel from its enemies, and they will return with the other tribes. Yaakov, when he saw what was happening, he said, for your salvation I hope, O Lord. In other words, it will be a troubled period. Things will not be black and white, and people will not know what to do. And so too, the Irish should realise that by being anti-Semitic, they're acting like a bad snake, which is treacherous, and they're betraying their forefathers. On the other hand, a great person will arise from Dan, from the tribe of Dan, and he will help the Messiah reveal himself in the end times, and also help the assistance to the Messiah, son of Joseph, who leads the 10 tribes, comes before the Messiah. It said in Deuteronomy, Dan is a young lion leaping forth from Bashan, and we find the tribe of Dan historically was in different areas. One area he was at first by the coast and towards the center, but the land was insufficient. From there he went up, and he took an area by the northern Galilee, and he took it and he conquered it. See Joshua 24:7, and they renamed the place after Dan their father. Previously it had been known as Brit-Am. Another source in Judges 13:28 says that they did the same thing, almost the same thing. They conquered a Canaanite city and they settled there, and they named it Dan after Dan their father, but it was known as Laish. So some of the commentators assume that Laish and Nesham are the same place with different names for the same area. This is not so according to our studies, entirely different areas. Just this was a characteristic of the tribe of Dan, that everywhere he went, they named places after Dan their father. Look at it, Mahane Dan, went here, went to there, they called it Dan, they're doing this, is what they're doing all the time. And they went up and they conquered Leshem and conquered Laish, and Laish was in the north. Laish was in the area known as Kilikia, and north of it in southeastern Turkey. And there they settled. In archaeological terminology, this area is known as Luash, and there's the Dananu, that is the people of Dan, who were in that area. And that area is an adjunct of the Bashan. If we put in the verse, Dan is a young lion leaping forth from Bashan, but we have another application to it. The Bashan was the whole area in the north to the east of the Jordan River, but further north, reaching right up to the Euphrates. All that area was known as Bashan. Bashan in Mesopotamian, that is of Syria and Babylon. In their inscriptions they referred to, or occasionally referred to, the Bashan under the name Basil. We find the same name, Basil or Basilia, applied according to Pliny the Roman geographer to Scandinavia. It's known as Basil, or Basilia, which is the name given to Bashan. And the Danes, the ancestors of the Danish people at first were in Sweden, the area of Sweden. And the area we now know as Denmark, at that time, was settled by the Jutes and by the Angles. And when the Jutes and the Angles and the Saxons, that is the Anglo-Saxons together, conquered the south of England and they left that country, the Danes from Sweden moved in. And it became known as Denmark. After Dan, their father, everywhere they went, they gave it a name associated with Dan, as they had done in biblical times and ever after. Another son was Naphtali. In Genesis 48, Jacob blesses Naphtali. He said, Naphtali is a swift gazelle. He is the one who utters beautiful words. And Deuteronomy 33 says that of Naphtali, Naphtali is favorably satisfied and is full of the Lord's blessings. Possess the sea in the south. So Naphtali is compared to a deer, a female deer. And the commentator says, why a female deer? Because a female deer can run faster than the male. And Naphtali was a swift runner. And the people of Norway are often associated with that type of athletic ability. And also said Naphtali is favorably satisfied in Deuteronomy 33. And when Naphtali said Naphtali is favorably satisfied, full of the Lord's blessings, the sea and he shall possess the sea and the south. So the Norwegians in recent times have been blessed. They've been first they had the fish from the sea. The fish was so plentiful that very often they could just put their hand in the water and pull a fish out. And the fish was good, the best in the world. After that, in their time, they found Neft. Even the very name Naphtali in Hebrew hints at the existence of Neft, that is petroleum, oil resources in the sea. And it says you possess, it says the west and the south, the word for west is yam, meaning sea. West and the south you shall possess, the sea, and the south you shall possess. And in the sea, opposite the coast of Naphtali, are oil, petroleum resources, which is making Naphtali one of the richest countries in the world. And so too they found vast deposits of phosphates. In the south, phosphates are very important because they provide fertilizer to grow our crops, to keep us alive. And the world supply was dwindling before then. And Naphtali now has it, and he can sell it to the rest of the world. It says that Naphtali is a swift gazelle, or like a female deer. And the Norwegians, also a lot of people in Scandinavia, the Norwegians are tough people. They are virile, athletic, outdoors. And they also have this aspect of being not feminine but delicate. They're not so much rough and tough types, but delicate, refined, with sensitivity. They have attributes that otherwise might be considered to be feminine attributes, even though they're he-men, masculine. They have the ability to take in these other attributes of personality and to make one whole out of them, which is worth noting. And the Bible praises them for this. So